So Lion Media is an advertising agency, right? Mainly focusing on DTC, right? We serve clients across a wide range of like different verticals. So mainly fashion, right, which is like apparel, skincare, cosmetic, and in addition to like supplements. And we have some like smaller niches in which like we serve clients there too as well, right? And so, we often get a lot of questions from different clients about just everything marketing, because like clients are very eager to learn about like the things that we're doing like behind the scene, under the hood of like the Meta ad accounts, like the Google accounts, TikTok, or whatever platform, right? And so we're going to talk about in this podcast, right? I know this is like only like the first episode, but we're going to talk about a lot of those different strategies across like all these different verticals, whether that be Meta, Google, TikTok, Snapchat, email marketing, programmatic, and just a host of different things, right? We're going to talk about like overarching strategies. We're going to talk about strategies for specific verticals, whether that may be like fashion, or like cosmetic, right? Or just like jewelry, right? Because we have a pretty big client in like the jewelry space. So, all right, that was like a quick intro of Lion Media. So let me just do a quick intro of myself. So my name is Frank Kenny, and I'm the CEO and also head of media at Lion Media. And so again, I'm very excited to launch this podcast, and hopefully the people audience watching this, founders, entrepreneurs that are already in e-commerce and just looking for new strategies in which that they can leverage to grow their brand, or whether you haven't even started a brand yet, but you're trying to get strategies, you're trying to get insights on how to even get started in this whole space, right? And so we're going to talk about various strategies, topics, and tactics that's going to serve kind of those wide range of like audiences, right? So you can be a beginner, you haven't even started a brand yet. You can be like mid, you're like in the 6 figures, you can be like in the 7 figures, 8 figures. And so, that's kind of where we cap out, because, I can't talk about growing and scaling a 9 figures brand because like we haven't actually, scaled a 9 figures brand. So that's kind of where, that's where the next stage is at, right? But guys, to kick off this episode, we're going to talk about profitability, right? Because this is something that I talk about with a lot of clients, right? We've updated our, onboarding deck to mainly focus a lot more on talking about profitability, right? And the reason why I think this is so important, specifically in e-commerce, right? Because in e-commerce, it's hard. Like cash flow can be very hard if you're not managing it right, and it's specifically hard if you lose a lot of revenue every time that a new customer comes, through Shopify, through like Meta or Google, right? Because you lose a lot of revenue. A lot of brands lose a lot of revenue through that, because the cost of acquisition it doesn't slow down. It just continues to increase, right? And so cash flow is just very important. And even more so because first order profitability, again, which is what we're going to talk about in this first episode, right? So essentially what that means, if you don't already know that, so it's like every time when you're paying Meta or Google dollars, right, they're acquiring customers for you, right? And so they're running ads, and then when a customer decides to buy a product, through one of these ads, there's a cost that you have to pay for each customer that comes through, which is what you call like obviously cost per acquisition. Obviously, many of you guys already know that. Maybe some of you guys don't know that, but like cost per acquisition is very important, right? But another thing that you also have to take into account for is when you look at your overall like business, when you look at like the different products that you carry, like if you're a fashion brand, you sell like t-shirts, pants, leggings, or shoes, whatever that may be, right? So there's a MSRP, or there's a cost, COGS, how much you're paying manufacturer to manufacture those shoes, right? So you have to take that into account, right? When you're kind of essentially trying to figure this out, you have to take that into account, how much, like what your COGS is, how much essentially you're paying the manufacturer to get the product. And then you have to take into account like your shipping costs, right? How much, like when each order comes in, how much you're paying, how much you're paying like the shipping company, whether that be UPS or whatever, how much you're paying them to ship each order, or if you're using a 3PL, so you have to take into account like how much you're paying, or you're paying to ship each order and getting that product to the customer, right? And you also have to think about like your credit card fees and things like that. And I do have over here, and I'll show you guys this, if you're watching this on YouTube or somewhere where it's visual, because this podcast is going to be both visual, as you can watch it on YouTube, and it's also going to be, obviously like in Apple Podcasts and Spotify, right? So if you're listening into this, you may not see the visual that I'm going to show over here, but if you're watching it on YouTube or wherever that may be, you're going to see the visual what I'm talking about, right? So first order profitability and why that's so important, right? Because depending on the type of business, like if you have a business that has like a high LTV, then you don't have to be so strict on first order profitability, because you can kind of lose revenue on the front end, knowing that in 60 days you're gonna be making profit from those customers that came in, right? It's very important to notice you don't have to be as aggressive on first order profitability. You can afford to lose money on the front end, knowing that on the 60 days or 90 days, your customers are gonna come back to purchase again. In that case, you become profitable because you don't have to pay to acquire those customers anymore. They're already in your dashboard or in your ecosystem, right? You just have to make sure that you're doing your due diligence and sending SMS and sending email marketing or other forms of marketing that doesn't require you to pay to acquire those customers again, right? So if you have a product that has a high LTV, then again, you don't have to be so worried. Like a lot of other brands and businesses, contingent on what the product is, how much you're paying for acquiring a customer, right? And so if you have a product that it's not like you don't need to use it over and over and over again. For example, like a watch, right? A watch is something that you can buy, because I have one in my hand right now. So like a watch is something you can buy, and you don't necessarily need to do anything to it again. Like you can buy a watch and like have the watch for like a year or a couple of years, right? So in that case, those type of business, like they have to be very aggressive in making sure that they're profitable on first order, right? So that means that after paying the manufacturer to produce the watch, after paying to ship the product to the customers, when you calculate all of that, obviously like the cost of acquisition as well, how much do you have left, right? How much do you have left? And again, we have a visual over here that we're going to show you. So it's very important. It's very important that it's something that you're always taking into account for into like every product, because like every product has different costs. Right now, if you're a business that just sells like one product, okay, cool. You don't have to worry too much in terms of like making sure you're calculating this for like each individual product. But if you're a business that has like multiple products, then it's kind of something you have to do the due diligence and making sure that you're calculating how much how much it costs you to manufacture each product, in addition to how much it costs you to ship that product, right? That also varies per how much it weighs, like the size and things within that scope, in addition to like how much you're paying the platforms. If you're advertising to sell those products, how much you're paying the platforms to acquire those customers. And then the math after that, it will let you know if you're, which is what you look at the contribution margin. It will let you know if you're making a profit per those acquisition. And if you're not, then you kind of have to rethink your whole acquisition strategy, right? Maybe it doesn't make sense to advertise this product, right? This is something that can be done through organic, right? You just kind of focus on promoting those products through like organic, right? Or whether that be on SEO, whether that just be on like on the social platforms. So that's probably what I would do. If paying to acquire those customers leaves you in a negative contribution margin, then that's probably what I'll do. Focus on doing this, like advertising those products organically, right? And so, as I mentioned, I have a visual over here that I'm gonna show you guys. If you're looking at this through YouTube, I have a visual that I'm gonna show you guys to essentially, so that this makes more sense, right? So you're not just hearing about it, so that it just makes more sense. And again, if you're listening to this, then you may not see it, but I'll try to explain it in the best way that you can also understand if you're just listening to this. So, right, let me get this opened up. And so what do we have here? As soon as I can get this opened up. What we have here, so like doing our paid media intro deck. So we have slides pertaining first order profitability, and we have this shown on a waterfall chart. So essentially, this is what that looks like, right? So I'll show you two case scenarios. Right? I'll show you two case scenarios. So let me make this bigger. So again, if you're watching this on YouTube, this can be you can see this vividly, right? Okay, cool. Take for an example this business, right? And so a lot of times when we work with brand, we dive into like the unit of economics of like each product. And so we're looking at, okay, boom. First of all, like what's the MSRP, which is essentially like how much you're selling the product for, right? So for this specific example, this product they're selling it for $112.35, right? And then when you calculate, one is like how much it costs them, this brand, to manufacture this product. So we include that within this calculation, boom. And then how much we're paying for shipping and taxes, right? When you accumulate all of that, when you calculate all of that, you get $53.93. Okay, cool, right? So this is what you have to subtract from the cost of the product, how much you're selling the product for, right? In addition to that, we also see how much the brands are paying Meta specifically to acquire a customer or to get a customer to purchase the product, right? So this is what that math looks like over here. It's paying $58.42 for whenever each person's purchases that product, right? So then you have to essentially obviously like subtract 53.93 and 54.42 from $112.35. And when you do the math from that, I'm pretty sure that comes up to $0, right? You're not losing money. You're not making money from this particular case scenario, right? And so when you then do the math and you calculate, okay, my break even would be at a 1.92. Okay, what do I do with that? What do I do with this break even number, right? So what you do with this break even number is essentially when you're looking at the Meta dashboard, when you're advertising this product, you have to hit a 1.92 on the platform so that you're not losing money, neither are you making money. So your break even ROAS, which is the 1.92 for this case scenario, essentially tells you, okay, cool, I'm not losing money over here, so like I'm good, nor am I making money. So like we're good. Now obviously if it's higher than that, cool, then you're making a couple of dollars from each acquisition of this specific product. Guys, so hopefully that makes sense. Now, in the case that you're losing revenue each time a customer purchases this product, then it can mean that you're in trouble, right? Again, depending on your type of business, it can mean that you're in trouble. If we're still talking about a watch brand, so if they're losing dollars, right? If this thing is like a -5 or -10, then it kind of means that they're in trouble. That means like every single customer that they are acquiring, right, through a specific platform, or maybe it's Meta, then they're losing money on that. And that's not a business model that you can scale. Right? You can't scale that, because if you scale that, it's like, okay, you're gonna come to a point in time in which you completely like you ran out of cash essentially, right? So this is why, again, I know a lot of founders, CEOs don't think too much about this because they're so focused on ROAS, right? You have to really get down into the, am I making money per product that we're selling, especially if you're advertising, right? Because this is huge. This is very, very huge, and this is important. Now, obviously, doing the thing and understanding what that is, and the question you might be asking, okay, cool, I know what my break-even ROAS is. How do I make sure that I'm not losing money on each acquisition? This is a topic for another podcast. Maybe like the second one that we're gonna do with this. But again, I just want to make sure that we're understanding this. Like, it's very important. Again, depending on the type of business model that you have and the type of products that you're selling, right? If you're losing money on the front end, you can't really scale that because you're essentially scaling something that's not working, right? At a point in time, you're gonna be losing. You're gonna run out of cash, right? So this is this scenario. So now let's look at the next scenario, right? And the breaking even ROAS in this may not be correct, so I'll have to double check that. But what's important is the following, is the math here. So we're looking at this product that costs $60.16, on Meta. So like that's the AOV essentially, right? And then we also see that when you calculate the COGS, how much it costs to produce the product, and including like the shipping and any like additional like fees that Shopify may charge you, which is simply like credit card and transactional fees. When you accumulate it and calculate all of that, it's gonna be $9.02. Like, this is phenomenal. Whatever the product is, I'm not gonna share that with you. It's phenomenal, right? And so this is a high margin business, right? And so the next thing that obviously we have to calculate is like the CAC, like what's the cost per acquisition. And so when you look at the cost per acquisition on here, it's $44.53. Okay, cool. When you do the math, 60.16 minus $9.02 minus $44.53, you get $6.61. That's the profit that you're making each time that somebody purchases this product. This is something that you can scale. So your contribution margin is $6.61 each time somebody purchases the product. This is something that you can scale, right? And so you make money then by like volume of scale, right? So you want to invest as much capital as you can into this specific scenario, because you know that you're making $6.61 on each transaction, right? Like, is that making sense? For example, like if you're an investor, you're looking to invest into a company, right? You want to invest into something that's going to be making you money over time, right? And investors look for companies that has this particular scenario, Now, the other scenario that I mentioned is that when you look at something, okay, I'm not losing money, so like it's okay. Maybe I can invest into this if they have, like a high LTV, right? Maybe that be like when you look at the 60 days or maybe like a 1 year LTV. If as long as I'm making some form of cash back, some form of capital back from a scenario like this, okay, like some investor might be okay with that. But with this, like they would be happy to invest in that. Now, there's another case scenario to where it's negative. I don't want to invest in a business like this that is losing capital, is losing dollars on each transaction because, again, this is not something that I want to scale because at what point do you make money, right? Because another thing that's very important that I want to mention is that a lot of companies, a lot of brands, they go out of business waiting for LTV, right? They're okay, cool, maybe in 3 or 4 or 5 years, we're going to be making money. It's okay, like, do you have enough capital? Do you have enough cash to be able to sustain that long? And so some brands think that they do, and so they end up dying waiting for LTV, and you don't want that to happen to you guys. So hopefully this makes sense. And so we're going to conclude the first episode of this podcast, which is the e-commerce growth map by Lion Media. Again, guys, my name is Frank Kinney, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.